Welcome back, Frasier fans, to the Joyous and the Jejune. A look here on hailing frequencies at our favourite and perhaps least favourite moments of each episode of the new Frasier series. I am one of your hosts, Stu.
And I'm your other host, Alastair Stu. It's been a couple of weeks. We're doing a bit of a catch up, two episodes in one today. How have you been? What's been happening?
Uh, really good, thank you. Yeah, scheduling's been a bit of a an issue between so much going on in our lives.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's lots of work. Basically, I'm gearing up. In fact, the next time our viewers see us after tonight's recordings, I won't have a beard because I need to be pasting a white one on for reasons.
The officially festive sanctioned beard, yes.
Yeah, I had to look round the place I'm going to be working today. So that was fun. Yeah, just lots and lots and lots of work. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm still feeling great today. Finally got to see one of my musical heroes live last night, who I had not had the chance to see before, or had not made it to see before. A guy called Bob Mould, who played an excellent show, and that was a real treat. So I'm looking forward to an even. I was about to say even bigger. That might be a bit of a lie. It was really good, but a very nice treat this evening of discussing the last couple of Frasier episodes with you, because I think these two have been, for me, they've been really fun to watch. So I'm looking forward to hearing what we both made of them. But
I
shall we give a traditional warning of sorts before we go any further, Stu?
Oh, absolutely, of course. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, so for any viewers who haven't watched either of the two latest Frasier episodes, Blind Date and Freddy's Birthday, I had to check. If you haven't watched either of those two episodes yet and you don't want spoilers, pause the video here, go away and watch them, come back and carry on with the video. Because we will be discussing spoilers as you would expect from a review episode.
Yeah.
But it's better to be safe than sorry on these. Better to say it unnecessarily than not say it and wish you had,
You have been warned. No angry comments below
eh?
saying that we spoiled things. We told you so.
That's it. Well, let's dive straight in. So, episode 6. So for us, this dropped a couple of weeks ago. Episode 6, Blind Date. A fun episode, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think a very well done callback to the glory days of original Frasier run. At least in the sort of overall style of what it's going for, the kind of story that's being told, felt very much in that mold. So yeah, what did you make? What's your general impressions of this one before we get into the details, Stu?
Without going into either of my points, yeah, I really liked it. It was it felt more settled than the previous episodes, like it's starting to find its voice a little bit. Find its groove that it's running into, which is and it's a good place, and I'm happy with the groove that it's. I have no idea where I'm going with that.
Well, all I would say is I totally agree with you. I think it is finding a groove. And I think a lot of what we might wind up kind of chewing over in our discussion of these two episodes is quite where that's resting in terms of how enjoyable and how close to the old run it is or isn't in the setting that it's put itself into or is finding for itself. And perhaps that's a good time to start talking about what we found joyous about this episode.
Indeed. Would you like to kick us off with that?
Okay. Well, I find the Freddy Frasier date story and the whole kind of conceit of the uncertainty around which of the lads the woman in the apartment was there for a date with, and the pushing his luck nature of Frasier's evening of desperately wanting to date both the women who turn up at the apartment at various points, and how that plays into their relationship with each other as well. It was just great, wasn't it? It felt, even if it wasn't, even if there were a couple of things maybe holding it back from reaching the dizzying heights of old Frasier, it felt very much in that vein of old Frasier. And even we get Freddie making a joke about pretending pretending he's the chef and serving them, one of them a meal on the balcony and one of them a meal in the dining room, and very kind of like old Frasier type thoughts appearing. So that was great. And the other thing that I will drop a joyous mention to is Alan totally stealing the scene in the bar with his Frasier. I've got my notes. Frasier disses, where he's sort of saying how awful life has been for Frasier and how much of a mess things have been, and the cheeky boy banter when he's describing his dream date to Eve at the bar. Absolute scene stealer in those moments. Classic Alan stuff as we were beginning to discover. So that was my joyous. What about you, Stu?
I I think you've absolutely hit the nail on the head. And again, Alan, it, I think at the end of this we might even, discuss perhaps at some point our favorite characters from the series. Alan's going to be a tough one to beat at this point. Even Frasier's coming with, Anyway, we'll see how this rest of the series pans out. But yeah, absolutely, Alan is an utter delight to watch. Yeah, so my joyous I've written Frasier comes home. It really, like you say, it's that real. It's got the old style of Frasier in there, and certainly one of the things I think that Frasier historically did was so many different styles of comedy so well. But the one thing that shone out above all else throughout the original run of Frasier was the times that it did farce. Um,
Absolutely.
no, I can tell you, as an actor who has done farce on stage, I've done a lot of farce. That yeah. Anyway, I won't go into details, but yeah, it's one of the most difficult types of comedy to do because like, for one thing, it's frantic, and getting your lines right, getting your movements right, getting being in exactly the right position on stage at the right time. Timing is everything with farce. Um, as is remembering things. I remember there was one farce I did, Caught in the Net. It's a sequel to Run for Your Wife. And there were 7 doors on stage, and at various times certain doors were locked, and the director, in some moments of insanity, had decided that the doors should actually lock, and each had a different key. And at various times, certain doors were locked, and the keys were in certain people's pockets, and that took a lot. Anyway, I'm digressing a little bit,
But we
but
we
yeah.
take your points, Stu. Yeah, the chaos.
So yeah, if it sounds stressful what I'm describing, that's what farce is. It is stress, it's nerves twanging right on the very, very edge. It's a calamity that doesn't quite happen. And this, yeah, absolutely. This it I think there are episodes of Frasier, certainly like the old Frasier, that have done farce better than this, but this was good farce nonetheless. And it was an absolute delight to see. There
Very
we go.
enjoyable. Any other joyous thoughts before we move on to the Jejune?
Um, Not without going into my favorite line, which I'll reserve.
Ah, okay. So shall we do move on to Jejune then?
What I mean, I think it's fair to say we both really enjoyed this episode. So our
Yeah.
Jejune, isn't a suggestion that we thought it was bad. Just, you know, it's catchy as
Yeah,
always with
I think what and this is the only point the only real point I have for this, there's a couple of things, but the only real point I have for this one is exactly that. It's not that it's bad, it's just that how good the Freddy Frasier date story is does overshadow the Eve's play story, which isn't bad, but does come off as very fillery by comparison. And I thought it was okay, but we got many episodes in the original run of Frasier where both the A and B storylines could knock out of the park simultaneously. And so I guess just touching as you said as well, that whilst this was really enjoyable, I agree with you that it's not The Seal Who Came to Dinner or Ham Radio or The Ski Lodge. We're not at those dizzying heights yet. So and the other thing just really quickly to mention is David's just gone. David is not in this episode, I think, at all. So I sort of presume slash hope that was just something sort of personal for the actor that he had to go and attend to, because it's a bit of a shame to have a member of the main cast missing. So a big relief that already we know he's back in the next episode in fine form. So not one to stress over too much, but sad to miss him this time around.
Well, it's that there's almost always an episode in any series run that is done on a very, very tight budget. And given the lack of different scenes, different venues in this episode, I think, we have the bar, the theatre, and the apartment. That's it. This was clearly their budget episode. So I think writing for fewer actors, writing for fewer locations, that's how they save money.
Makes sense to me, Stu. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. What was your jejune for this one?
So I've got a jejune and a dishonorable mention. I'll do my dishonorable mention, and it's actually something you'd said on a previous episode about the Alan thing and the constant references to his drinking, and I absolutely agree with you. And the more I'm watching it, the more I'm seeing. And it was when they were sat in the theatre, he's there holding a hip flask. There was no reason whatsoever for him to be holding that hip flask. It didn't add anything to the scene. Not having it wouldn't have detracted anything from the scene. It was unnecessary. So yeah, that I thought was could have been better. Didn't need it. Could have lost it. My main point was about the writing for the character of June. This is the main love interest that both of them are going for initially. She walks in, she instantly spots that they're LaCroix pillows, cushions on his settee. She instantly recognized as Donizetti on the stereo. I found that incredibly far-fetched and hard to believe. All right, the Donizetti, if you're really familiar, I mean, I actually thought it was Shostakovich at first. Not that I'm an audiophile or anything, but all right, if she knows Donizetti really, really well, and not that many people do. That's really obscure, even amongst classical music fans. But the LaCroix cushions, nah. You wouldn't just walk in and go, "Oh, that's no."
No, totally with you. A bit of fanciful writing to fit the occasion there, rather than what we The subtlety we might have expected had this been a kind of original Frasier classic, where I don't know if subtlety is the right word, a defter hand in the writing of these moments that move us to where we want to be in a scene. Yeah, can get behind you on that one, Stu.
Yeah. But there we go. That was as much nitpicky as I got with this. How about yourself?
For best line.
No, for your Jejune. Oh no, you sorry, you gave yours. Oh, sorry. It has been a long time since we've done these. Yeah, let's go on to your best line
Best
then.
line, yeah. My best line in this one was, "There's one thing I have to clear up. You both wanted me, still got it." I think just in terms of like callbacks to the original show, if it's not a word for word, it's very close to one or two Frasier quips that we got at various points in the original run, and it just caps the. It's not the very end of the episode, I think, but it caps that storyline very nicely.
Really interestingly, you mentioned an episode earlier that this episode reminded me of, and that line particularly because it was a counterpoint to, which was the ski lodge. As
Yes, yeah.
let me
No
understand this,
one,
all
no one
this,
was. Yeah.
throbbing emotions going on in the room, and nobody wanted me, you know. So that counterpoint, it really actually put me in mind of the ski lodge episode.
Very true, very true. Maybe that's
No,
more
it's
what I was thinking of actually. Yeah, yeah. What about
well,
you, Stu? Favorite line?
yeah. So my favorite line, I picked two again. A kind of like an honourable mention, which was Alan when he talks about the play was completely unrealistic. That butler would have been wearing gloves. Um, because when I was watching it, that was my first thought when I saw Eve play.
You're on the Alan
so,
wavelength. I love it.
so Alan coming out and saying that really tickled me. But it was when Alan, I think you referenced this line earlier where he says, "Always admired your dewy-eyed optimism, even though love's been punching you in the face for 3 decades."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He absolutely steals the scene in the bar. Yeah.
Oh, totally. I mean, he's always stealing the scene, no matter what.
Do you know what?
In this
This is a good,
series,
maybe a good juncture to move on to our discussion of season one, episode seven, Freddy's birthday, because I kind of want to pick up on Alan in the show and Lyndhurst's performance a bit, but I feel like maybe talking about it in relation to this episode would be a good place to move it on to. So, since I started us off with the Joyous for the last episode, do you want to give us your Joyous for Freddy's birthday?
more than happy to. It's actually kind of the same as the last episode that this really feels like the good old days of Frasier. This felt like a traditional Frasier episode, in not just the fact that Lilith was there, although having Bibi Newirth in obviously lends itself to that, and that Frasier and Lilith's byplay is always a pleasure to see and lots of fun. But yeah, this is where I feel that the show is definitely sort of finding its feet and starting to relax and have fun with it all. That's what I felt, and yeah, that having more familiar sort of characters and just seem to relax a bit more with it. They're not trying so hard, and that allowed it to be Frasier. Does that make sense?
Interesting. Yeah, I understand, definitely understand. And my Joyous, the first point little note I have is just Bibi Neuwirth. Yeah, seeing her back as Lilith is such a treat. The rapport between her and Grammar is as good as ever. And it really kind of puts you or put me in mind of I would have no problems with her being a recurring character much more regularly than she was in the original run of Frasier. I think it just fits better here. It didn't feel it didn't feel overbearingly like a Lilith episode in the way that some of the Frasier episodes, as amazing as they were, and as much as I enjoyed Lilith in those episodes, sometimes felt very boxed into like this is the Lilith episode, and the way she appears and what she's doing in this one, I think. Whether maybe it's intentional, the door feels a lot more open to her dropping in and having episodes like this more frequently, and I would not be sad to see it happen. So much fun seeing her back for this one. And jumping on the We Love Alan bandwagon, my other joyous point for this one was Alan's quest to get Lilith to remember who he was, and all the various forms that it takes through this episode, from his wearing the suit that he wore to the wedding, to the verbal attempts at the cafe earlier the bar earlier in the episode to try and jog her memory, to her little outburst of who is Alan later when he's not even there anymore and they're all talking about Alan still. Just brilliant. And I think what I realized in this episode, watching these bits with Alan doing this thing of trying to get Lilith to remember who he was, is that I really felt that Lyndhurst understands how to get the most out of the writing that is going into this show, because we've talked about this before, that sometimes it feels like he's making something out of, not quite out of nothing, that would be too harsh on the writing, but he's occasionally working with material that's quite middle of the road and delivering it or performing in such a way that it's really comedically impactful. And I think this episode was the point where the penny dropped for me, where I found myself thinking, I don't think any other cast member is able to mine the writing that they're getting on this show as well as Lyndhurst is. And I think that's what makes Alan such a scene stealer and so memorable in the reboot. And it was just a joy to watch in this episode. And there's so many laugh out loud Alan moments, as increasingly is the case in every episode of the show. So.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. With Lyndhurst, there's no wastage, and by that I mean, so when an actor gets a script, you get your lines and you'll see what's happening in the story, and some lines are just there just to move the story forward, some that are there as a punchline, but he doesn't just say a line that's there to move the story forward. He'll make something of the line. There's the effort that Lyndhurst puts into it is absolutely phenomenal and really rewarding, because everything he says, every look, every glance, every movement has purpose, and that purpose is to not just to move but to either garner affection from the audience or to make the audience laugh or whatever. But there's no wastage. That's I'm gushing a little bit, but of course the amount of effort he puts in is reflected in the fact that it looks so effortless, which is one of those paradoxes you get with acting. that the harder you have to work really hard to make it look like you're not working at all.
Absolutely. And actually, this is the point you make here. If you are ready to move on to the Jejune, it moves me onto my Jejune quite nicely, because it sort of is a bit of a pivot from what we're talking about here, which is to say that there's a couple of things. So it's great to see BB back and have Lilith back on. Sorry, I should be careful about saying BB back because there's going to be confusion with the character of BB. So BB Neuwirth playing Lilith is brilliant to have back, but it's very hard. It makes it more unavoidable to draw those comparisons back to old Frasier when you have a character from that run come into this new one. And I enjoyed the writing between Frasier and Lilith. I thought that the chemistry between the actors was great still, but it's not the writing from the original run of Frasier. For me, it's not at that level. And there is an aspect of, as fun as it is to see Lilith back, it is a reminder that the show hasn't. And this is a really fun episode. This is one of my favorite episodes from this season, but I still feel that it's just a little bit of a, it isn't the old Frasier. It's in that vein. It's enjoyable TV, but there's just that little reminder from seeing her pop up. And same with Alan's, the fun of watching Alan is almost at a point now for me where it's, I hesitate to use the word overbearing, but it's getting close to that in the sense that he's so good compared to some of the people he's sharing the screen with. I struggle when we suddenly go back to Freddy or David or something from Alan, and yeah, it's a tough act to follow with how well he's performing and how well he's interpreting what he's given at the moment. So that was my Jejune, which maybe is a little bit Scrooge-ish of me, because basically I'm saying that I really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was a good laugh, but I'm just drawing comparisons back to the old run, and maybe that's not totally fair.
Interesting. I think your points are absolutely valid. No, the writing's not as tight as it used to be by any stretch. I think the storylines are there, what we're familiar with in Frasier, but yeah, the writing itself. I think all the actors do a lot with the writing, and yeah, it's. I take your point about working with Nicholas Lyndhurst. That must be. It must, yeah. It's almost like he's overpowering the other actors a little bit, isn't it?
And I mean, it's
amongst them, I've got to say.
Yes, and that's so interesting because I think Grammer picks up as Frasier effortlessly in a way that's incredibly impressive after so long away in this season. And I think his performance as Frasier is a real gem throughout this series, the good and the bad. But Lyndhurst has been able to latch on to get just pull that thread of like what the writers are giving and how he can act it and how he can. There's this sort of connection there that's just elevating his performance. I'm probably butchering acting terminology and giving a very bad description of this by comparison to what you could do, Stu. But hopefully people hopefully people understand what I mean. That he seems to have a connection with the writing and the ability to perform and interpret it. That is just as particularly as things go on, and I feel like he gets better and better at that as well. And this is not to disparage other cast members who I think have across the board done an amazing job at pulling their weight, given sort of disparities in how long people have been acting for and what their careers have been like. I genuinely think that everybody who's on the cast has come some way since episode 1 or 2 by the point that we're seeing, episode 6 and 7. And but yeah, Nicholas Lyndhurst is just roaring away with it. So it'll be interesting to see where that takes us in the future.
It's interesting that a Jejune point is he's too damn good.
Yeah. Sorry, Nicholas. Yeah. But don't stop.
Well,
Yeah.
no, absolutely. My see, my Jejune moment is, I think, if I'm interpreting you correctly, I think kind of along the same lines as yours, but perhaps from a different sort of slant. I come to the same conclusion, but from a different slant. In that my Jejune moment was Lilith not recognizing Alan as a whole. Now this is not to knock the performances at all. Bibi Newirth and Nicholas Lyndhurst, absolutely, they did everything they could. But as a plot point, I found it hard to accept. I mean, at first, kind of like at very first, not recognizing him. Yeah, okay, fair enough. But then for it to carry on to such ridiculous lengths, like with the white linen suit, and then she remembers him because, like, he had a dirty mojito, and then did the who's Alan? After that, I get the joke that they were going for, but it felt a heavy-handed, crude joke, crude punnery. And I think kind of some of the best comedy is the stuff that feels realistic, feels like it can be like massively extreme comedy. And the perfect example of this, that I think we've already quoted a few times in different episodes, is Niles doing his silent movie star scene when he's preparing for the date. It is ridiculous, and it is insane what happens, but it is delivered and shot, and the whole thing is filmed in such a way that it feels like it could really happen. Lilith not recognizing Alan at all for that length of time didn't strike me that way. It didn't sit right.
Yeah, I totally hear what you're saying. I think it's interesting that it feels almost like we're coming back to like a variation on this point from, as you say, from slightly different points of view or different roads in, but the I think it's going back to that idea that things are not being executed as as well as they were on the previous version of the show. And one thing that I'm interested in is that I've seen Joe Keenan, who wrote a staggering number of fan favorites from the original run of Frasier, do interviews recently about the new run. But he's not slated as a writer for this season. And I would be really interested. I have no idea what the story is with whether he writes or not still, whether he'd be interested in returning, whether there's scope there for him to. But it would be, I would absolutely love if he was interested and able, and it all came together to see him take a shot at the script for the Frasier 2023, because I think it would be great TV. That's the main reason, but it would also very quickly, I think, throw into relief maybe the kind of the nexus, the focal point of where things aren't quite clicking in the way that they used to. So yeah, Frasier showrunners, if you're listening and season 2 is coming up and you're pals with Joe, get him to write an episode. Let's see what it would be like.
Well, it's interesting. It can be a really risky thing to do, to bring something like Frasier, but after so long, something that is so beloved by so many millions of people, it has such a special place for them. To bring it back in a modern age is an incredibly risky thing to do, because if it bombs and you're involved, it can take your career down with it. If it flourishes, fantastic. And I wonder if this is perhaps why some of the previous cast members of Frasier are just sitting back, waiting to see what happens with it. Does not surprise me in the least that if that's kind of the, let's see how it goes for, and might be the same, of course, with Joe Keenan.
I feel completely like you're spot on there, Stu. I think you've got the read on what's happening with people who might rejoin either side of the camera in time to come. And I think to cap off our chat about these couple of episodes, it's really important to say that like this is enjoyable TV. Like it was really entertaining to watch these episodes. It feels like this new version of Frasier is really hitting its stride now, and that things are becoming more consistent and taking form in a way that's really enjoyable to see. And this is we're definitely in a place where like I would rather have this Frasier than no more Frasier at all, which is a really important important yardstick for any revival to get to. So for all we're talking about comparisons to previous seasons or things that maybe haven't completely lined up to what we might have hoped for. In general, it's thumbs up for me for the revival and for these episodes. So don't take away like the negativity is as we always say, like a little remark on what could make, where there's maybe room for improvement in the future, and goals that could yet still be hit, rather than like a damning of where we're at, which is really quite fun. So
yeah. Well, we do have more positive to speak about episode 7, of course, because we haven't done our favorite lines yet.
How could I forget favorite lines? Stu, what was your favorite line this week?
They're just joking. I know who you are. Now, aren't you going to welcome us to Jurassic Park?
Yes,
that
was a big
not
laugh
an Alan
out loud.
line if it was delivered at him, but yeah. Yeah, that was a Lilith line. I just thought the timing of it, the delivery was just absolutely, spot on.
It was fantastic, wasn't it? Yeah, and really, it was a really nice little crescendo topper of those because you get one from Frasier and Freddy beforehand of other people that he looks like, and then you kind of get that as sort of like the cherry on top of the cake of jokes on Alan's suit, and it's brilliant. Yeah.
How about you?
Well, I also went for this time an actual Alan line rather than a line directed at him. And for me, this line and the way Lyndhurst delivers it and the way it hits is the perfect example of what I'm talking about in terms of him just pulling these lines from thin air and just turning them into solid gold. It's where he just turns around and goes, it's not a party without Alan. And it's nice. It's in some ways it's nothing, and yet he delivers that line like it's like Alan the show. It's like just brilliant stuff. So yeah, my line of the week this week. It's not a party without Alan.
Absolutely fantastic. I mean, there were a lot of great lines. We haven't mentioned David this episode. How did you feel David fitted in?
Nice to see him back doing his things. Wasn't I don't think it was like the heights of the Mistaken for an Orphan pinnacle that we saw David reach earlier this season, but neither did I think it was his worst moments for the season. So I think the moment that he gets where he goes. He goes, oh, and that's a point for Aunt Lilith, and then he goes, oh, Dr. Stern, and there were a couple of nice moments like that in there. So, keep going, David, keep doing your thing.
It felt to me less shoehorned in, less of an afterthought, basically.
I think probably the first couple of episodes this season were really felt like there was just the actor was maybe struggling with just like a lot of weight of expectation and having to deal with trying to think about where he fit into the formula of the show and the weight from the previous incarnation of the show that maybe dictates to you sort of where you're imagining that. And it feels great. It feels like he's become a lot freer from that as the show's gone on, and it's just made the character his own increasingly more, and that's been really enjoyable to watch. And yeah, I think as long as they give him good material to work with, we can But I'll be happy to see more of him in the next couple of episodes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yes, we are looking forward to our next episodes. We'll work out off air when it is we're going to be able to record those, but yeah, it'll happen. It'll happen. Do watch this space, and thank you to everyone who made the lovely comments about this being a bit delayed and how much you were looking forward to it. We do appreciate that. And sorry it was delayed, but hey, life happens sometimes.
We hope we made up for it with this bounty of joyousness in this two-part recap. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And did you enjoy, or what points did you enjoy? Do you agree with our Joyous and Jejune moments, or do you think there were other things we'd missed and favorite lines? Do let us know in the comments below. Make sure you like and subscribe, all that good stuff. In the
I particularly want to
meantime,
know if anyone just
oh,
doesn't like Alan. Is there
yeah,
anyone out there who just doesn't like Alan? You know, and everyone I've spoken to thinks he's great. So yeah, tell us in the comments.
I, yeah, yeah, I think that's a really good call. I'd be genuinely interested to know if they do and why.
Yeah, tell
Yeah.
us why as well. Don't just
Oh
put
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Alan
Don't just
sucks.
say
You
I hate Alan. Yeah,
know?
yeah.
Okay, Stu, I won't step on your sign off this time. Go for it.
No, no, that's a thing. No, I think that's really, really good call. It'd be very interesting to hear. But yes, until next time, then. Good afternoon, YouTube, and good mental health.